name's Andy McKay. I'm the Director of Player Development with the Seattle Mariners. Tech has been around for a long time, and if you look at the history of all the tech that we use, I mean, there was huge resistance to a radar gun, back in the day. There was huge resistance to the use of video back in the day. So every time you have a breakthrough with technology, there's usually some fight. But certainly in the last few years, you've seen the explosion of what we're able to track and monitor, and ultimately to remove the human bias from it. But when you look at coaching, the fundamentals of the game of baseball have never changed, and they're not going to change. What technology does, it gives us a much better understanding of those basic fundamentals, and that's really what we're preaching to our people. That this isn't changing the game; it's just giving us the ability to teach it better, provide more clarity about it, and ultimately, we're able to hold ourselves as coaches and our players more accountable because we have real information. And it kind of goes back to that: if we can make every player, the best version of them, we create as much flexibility for the Seattle Mariners as possible, and we create as much industry value for each player as humanly possible. And I mean, we spend a lot of time in tunnel cages, and I think every organization, every college program has some version of a tunnel cage. Oftentimes it's an enclosed indoor hitting facility. And it's a great teaching environment, but it's also hard to evaluate in. For example, you make contact in an enclosed building, it sounds really loud. And it sounds much louder than if it were outside. And so you begin fooling yourself, thinking how hard that ball's coming off the bat. You hit a ball off the top of a batting cage and it tends to look like it's a pop-up. But through using our Rapsodo hitting device, we can go inside and find out actually the ball was not hit that hard. It just sounded hard. And yes, it hit the back of the tunnel cage, but that would have been a ground ball in a game. And the ball that we thought was a pop-up actually lands in the upper deck. And so you can't always hit out on the field. And when you're inside, the Rapsodo hitting device really allows us to objectively evaluate not only ball flight, but exit velocity while in the cage. And when you start getting enough data points, you understand what kind of exit velocity can we expect for this player when he's on time and gets the barrel to the baseball. And then at that point, you can start determining your optimum launch angle for that player. And again, it's back to the fundamentals of the game. Line drives have always played in the history of the game. But you start finding players that actually have enough exit velocity that we can get the ball over the fence, if we can get it up in the air enough. And then you find players too that they don't have enough exit velo, and we need to keep it on more of a pure line drive trajectory. And when you get into a draft room, again, information is power, and our scouting department does a wonderful job of accumulating as much information as we can, on a player. And part of that information you're trying to get is, do we have any real data? And more times than not, we'll be able to find, some version of Rapsodo data on players. And what we've learned in the draft is you find players that you're identifying that maybe haven't performed great, but you see something in pitch characteristic that makes you think there's something here, and then another team drafts them and you realize, okay, they're probably looking at the same things that we're looking at. So I think the first thing we do is when we get a healthy sample size, you're really trying to understand the individual pitch characteristics for each of this pitcher's individual pitches. What is the ball really doing once it leaves his hand? And, you learn a lot about spin rates on all pitches, but, really through Rapsodo, when we're able to couple that with spin efficiency, which would be something that I certainly did not understand originally. I think like many people, I jumped into this thinking, we just have to make the ball spin as many times as possible. And I guess probably more spin is better, but only if it's efficient in how it's used. And there's plenty of major league pitchers that have below average spin rates, certainly on breaking balls, but have great breaking balls because of very high spin efficiency. So one, it really helps you understand the characteristics of the pitch, and then when you understand the characteristics, then you can start diving into how you help create a better pitch. And that's an important thing that we've made some progress with, and your ability to couple that with some good video, and certainly seeing the ball come out of a pitcher's hand and out of a release point. is highly beneficial. And then, so once you identify it and then you try to develop it more, then it's about maintaining it. And then you can start tracking it and understanding it's starting to slip and it's starting to kind of regress and do different things. And we're pretty on top of our testing protocols and making sure that the numbers that are being spit out on both TrackMan and Rapsodo are lining up for the most part, and they do. And so, we trust both, and we have very few examples of where the numbers are going in different directions. And then obviously, from a major league standpoint, we've accumulated quite a database of pure TrackMan data, and so now we're able to capture our stuff in bullpens. So, you have situations where you can show players that what you're doing in the bullpen is a little bit different than what's happening in the game. So why is that happening, and what can we do to overcome those issues? But the TrackMan data just gives us a massive library to work off of and really try to compare pitchers to. And you're trying to give the player a path. You're trying to give them a plan to move forward, and if you can show them that, and I think more times than not what we've been able to show players that they're not as far away as they think. Your employability is your responsibility, and you can't bring a 1990 skill set to a 2018 industry. It just doesn't work. And tech is part of coaching. And I would also, I think it's important to understand, tech is not coaching. It still comes down to the knowledge in your head, your ability to communicate, your ability to create clarity for the player, to motivate the player, to bring accountability to the player. But tech is a tool, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So if I were a young coach and I was looking to get into the industry, you could never look somebody in the face and say, you're going to be able to sustain a career at a young age in 2018 if you're unwilling to test these things. And it's no different than what we do with our players. We try to push our players to get better. And I think this is an opportunity for coaches to get better as well. And it creates it's such a level of checks and balances to remove our human bias from the coaching process, which is there for all of us.